The air smelled of fresh bread and burnt coffee, the kind of ordinary Tuesday morning smell that makes a place feel alive. It was just past 7 a.m. at Marbella's, a busy downtown diner tucked between two office towers in Chicago. Servers rushed between tables, the espresso machine hissed, and the morning rush was already building. In the back corner near the kitchen door, a man in a faded gray t-shirt and an apron tied loosely around his waist wiped down a table that had just been vacated. Nothing about him stood out. Not his haircut, not his shoes, not the way he moved. And that's exactly how he wanted it. His name was Daniel Reyes, but almost no one in that diner knew that. To the regulars, he was just Danny, the quiet guy who bussed tables most mornings and never said much. But in reality, Daniel Reyes owned Marbella's, not just that location, 11 others across the city, along with a small empire of restaurants, real estate, and a logistics company that supplied half the bakeries in the state. He had built it all from nothing, starting as a dishwasher in this very kitchen 22 years ago. 3 mornings a week, he came back. No suit, no assistant, no announcement. Just an apron and a rag. He believed something most of his executives didn't. You can't run a kitchen you've forgotten how to stand in. As Daniel wiped down table 6, the bell above the door jingled. A man walked in wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the diner's monthly rent. His shoes clicked sharply against the tile. His name was Preston Hale, a regional director for a corporate franchise group that had been trying to buy out Marbella's for the better part of a year. He'd come, uninvited, to have a look around. Before another round of negotiations, Preston scanned the room like he was pricing it by the square foot. He sat down at a booth, snapped his fingers without looking up from his phone, and said, loud enough for half the diner to hear, "Can someone get this table cleaned? And bring me a coffee, black, no sugar." Daniel, still wiping the next table over, walked toward him without hesitation. "Be right with you," he said calmly, gathering the dirty plates left behind. Preston barely glanced at him. "You work here long?" he asked, not really interested in the answer, more interested in filling silence while he typed an email. "Long enough," Daniel said. Preston smirked. "Must be tough. Places like this, they don't last. No real systems, no scalability. That's why ownership's finally ready to sell." He said it like he was talking about furniture, not people's livelihoods. "Once we take over, half this staff won't be needed. Efficiency, you understand." Daniel nodded slowly, setting the dirty plates onto his tray. "I understand efficiency," he said. "I also understand the difference between cutting costs, cutting the heart out of a place." Preston chuckled, unbothered. Spoken like someone who's never run a real business. A nearby server, Marisol, who had worked at Marbella's for 6 years, caught Daniel's eye for just a second. She knew exactly who he was. Her mouth opened slightly, but Daniel gave the smallest shake of his head. Not yet. Preston's coffee came. He sipped it, made a face, and pushed it aside. "Weak," he muttered, already standing to leave for his meeting with ownership later that afternoon. As he walked out, he tossed a $5 bill under the table without looking back. "Buy yourself something nice," he said, smirking at his own joke. Daniel picked up the bill, folded it once, and slipped it into his apron pocket without a word. That afternoon, the boardroom on the 40th floor of Hale Group's office tower was set for a different kind of meeting. Lawyers on one side, a slideshow projected on the wall, numbers scrolling past about valuation, projected layoffs, and operational restructuring. Preston stood at the head of the table, confident, already speaking as if the deal was signed. "Marbella's leadership has been informal at best," he told the room. "From what I saw this morning, it's a relic. Good bones, outdated management. Once we close this, we restructure top to bottom." The door opened. Daniel walked in. No apron now, just a simple navy blazer over the same gray shirt, the rag still faintly visible as a damp patch on his sleeve he hadn't noticed. He took the seat at the head of the table, directly across from Preston. "Mr. Reyes," the lead lawyer said, standing slightly. "Thank you for joining us." Preston froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. "Reyes," he repeated slowly, the name turning over in his head before his eyes widened. You were at the diner this morning. You were bussing tables." "I was," Daniel said. "I do that most weeks. Helps me remember what I'm actually protecting." Preston set his cup down carefully, color draining slightly from his face. "I didn't realize." "You didn't ask," Daniel said, not unkindly. "You assumed. You looked at a man in an apron and decided he didn't matter enough to be spoken to like a person. That tells me more about how you'd run my restaurants than any slide in that deck." The room had gone completely silent. Even the lawyers who worked for Hale Group shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly finding their notepads far more interesting than the man standing at the head of the table. Outside the wall of windows, the city carried on as if nothing had changed. Taxis honking, a faint hum of traffic 40 floors below. But inside that room, time had slowed to a crawl. "This deal isn't about scalability," Daniel continued, standing now, his voice steady. "Never raised, never rushed." He let his eyes move slowly across the table, from the lead lawyer to the analysts with their laptops still glowing, to Preston, who hadn't moved an inch since the moment his name was spoken. "It's about people, real people, with real lives, who showed up to that diner long before any of you ever walked through its doors." He paused, letting the words breathe. "Marisol, who poured your coffee this morning, the one you said was weak, has put 2 kids through community college on tips from that diner. Not from a salary, not from a bonus structure. From tips. From people leaving a little extra because they appreciated being treated like human beings." He looked directly at Preston now. "The cook in the back, the one whose name you never bothered to ask, has been there 19 years. 19. He's trained more young cooks who went on to open their own places than half the culinary schools in this city. You called all of that a relic." Daniel's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened like a blade catching light. "I call it a foundation. One you will never understand, because you've never had to build one. You've only ever known how to take one apart and call it efficiency." Preston opened his mouth, his jaw working as though searching for the right combination of words that might undo the last 60 seconds. Nothing came out. He glanced toward the lawyers, toward the slideshow still glowing faintly behind him, as if numbers on a screen could somehow rescue him. They couldn't. "I'm not against growth," Daniel said, softer now, almost gentle though no less firm. "I built this company on growth. I'm not against partnership either. I've sat across from good people who wanted to build something together, and I've said yes to plenty of them." He let that settle before continuing. "But I will not hand 12 restaurants and 400 employees, 400 families to someone who sees a $5 tip as a punchline and a server as furniture to be rearranged for convenience." He paused again, longer this time, letting the silence do what silence does best, make people sit with the truth of what had just been said. "The deal is off." He turned, buttoned his blazer with one unhurried motion, and walked toward the door. Behind him, the slideshow kept glowing on the wall. Bar charts, projected margins, a timeline labeled Phase 1 Integration. Numbers that, a minute ago, had felt like the most important thing in the room. Now they meant nothing. Nobody even looked at them. Every eye in that boardroom followed Daniel instead, watching the door close quietly behind him, the soft click somehow louder than anything that had been said in the last hour. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then chairs began to shift. Papers were gathered, and the meeting dissolved into a kind of stunned, murmuring silence that no one quite knew how to end. By that evening, the story had already started moving through the office towers downtown, quietly at first, passed between assistants and junior associates in hallway whispers, then faster, spilling out of the building entirely. Someone in the boardroom, perhaps one of the junior lawyers, perhaps an assistant who'd slipped in to drop off documents, had recorded part of it on their phone. Grainy, shaky footage, but clear enough to hear Daniel's voice, clear enough to see Preston's face change. By the next morning, it had spread across local business pages and social media, the headlines practically writing themselves. Billionaire owner worked the floor of his own diner, then walked away from a 9-figure deal over how his staff was treated. The story was shared, reshared, quoted, and dissected. News anchors brought it up between segments. Business commentators debated whether it was a brilliant PR move or simply a man being exactly who he'd always been when no one was watching. Comments poured in by the thousands. People shared their own stories about bosses who'd never once set foot on the floor of the businesses they ran, about managers who treated employees like line items, about the rare few who actually remembered what it felt like to carry a tray, clean a counter, or stand on aching feet for an 8-hour shift. Marisol, who hadn't asked for any of the attention,